We're good. Okay, here's my bio. And I have, this summer, the Courier-Journal hired me to do several articles, history articles, and these are some of the ones that I did earlier this year. I did about 20 of those, and some of you getting to CJ might have seen those, and I will reference that later in my talk. I do have some books here this evening. Several books I still have. My haunted house book this time of year is always very popular. But I also did one called Carriage Houses of Louisville, and it features all the historical firehouses in the Louisville area, not so much southern Indiana. But if you're interested in some of the history of these firehouses, I've got this in my book, which I have several after the show. So here's what our talk is this evening. Here are some of the folks I want to thank for assisting me this evening. And as noted, this talk somewhat came out of this article I did for the CJ back on September the 8th. I did a thing on major fires in the Louisville area, and I've since expanded it to southern Indiana. So I'm not just talking Louisville, but also New Albany, Clarksville, and Jeffersonville this evening also. Of course, we're here at the Vintage Fire Museum. Fantastic. If this is your first time, I hope you come back, especially with grandkids. My grandkids have been here, just phenomenal museum for those folks. And you see some of the equipment that is here. Phenomenal. I applaud you folks for all the passion and dedication that you do for this museum. So here's a list of some significant fires in Louisville history. If you notice, primarily towards the bottom there, three from the bottom, 1886 to 1897. It's called the Fatal 48 Fires. Very devastating in downtown Louisville, down near 6th and West Main. A number of firefighters were killed in some of those fires, along with a lot of civilians. And that was probably some of the more major fires early on in Louisville history. Not certain about the Bourbon Stockyards. I'm not sure if I would like to have cleaned that mess up afterwards. Not the best. And of course, the original Galt House was destroyed by fire as well. We'll discuss that here shortly. Some more history of the Louisville Fire Department. Do we have any Louisville firefighters here this evening?
The original one's right here.
Yeah, he's in that picture. He's third from left.
So as you can see,
Right there in the front.
what was fascinating is when the professional firefighters came in 1858, the property fire losses dropped by almost 3/4, 75%, once you had a full-time professional firefighting unit. Some of the equipment of the Louisville Fire Department. And it's greatly changed over the years. New Albany firefighting history, this is more recent. Some of the equipment there. And again, it has changed dramatically also over the years. Love this photograph, which is displayed here at the Fire Museum over in the back side. I love this photograph of the vintage firemen up top and then 100 years later below. Jeffersonville fire history, more recent there, which we'll discuss each of these later in the presentation. In Clarksville. Couldn't find too much information on the Clarksville history. Did find one of their fire trucks there. I'm not sure if we have anyone from Clarksville firefighters here this evening, but they need to include more history on their website. And firefighting has greatly improved over the past 50 years. The black and white photograph was taken about 50 years ago. You can see they still use an axe. However, the oxygen equipment now that you now wear really protects you from all the carcinogens that are contained in these fumes that are created during these fires. And as I talk about these major fires, if anyone here worked one of the fires or know more about it, feel free to talk, raise your hand, or just speak out loud. I like interactive presentations. We all learn from that. So as I go through a number of these fires, if you've been there, let us know. House fires. This one happened in the old Louisville area, 1440 South 6th, the upper left-hand corner. That yellow building there in the center. Then on the right, you can see after it had been damaged by fire. And then the lower photograph, and just a year ago, it was a vacant lot now. This one was at 1246 South 1st Street, major fire, and unfortunately it's a vacant lot also now. I wish I had not shown Frank Lloyd Wright there in the lower right-hand corner, but you'll soon see why I did that. But in the upper left-hand corner was the Women's Club of Louisville. They had a clubhouse down at 1212 South 4th Street. That was their clubhouse. It was built in 1912. It was patterned after a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Chicago, the Winslow House, as you can see how it mirrored the design there. This is what it looks like today after the fire. So the building is still there, but drastically altered from the fire in 1917. This is another house fire in Old Louisville area. It's called the Bishop Hat House, 1390 South 3rd, fire on June 18th, 2020. Major fire. The lower right-hand corner is what it looks like today, but I understand that the current owner is about ready to restore it back to what it looked like prior to the fire. Over in southern Indiana, the Howard Steamboat Museum had a major fire in 1971. And again, if anyone was at this fire, let us know. Here's a little description of what happened. A boiler started in the basement, and the fire rapidly went up the staircase up through the roof of this 3-story mansion. Fortunately, to the firefighters' credit, you were there on the spot and were able to save the building from collapsing. So the fire went up this central stair. You worked like a chimney, if you will. The boiler was down below in the basement. It went straight up through the roof. Here are some images of the fire. Some more. And it's been restored. If you've been over to the Howard Steamboat Museum, you would never have known that a fire was there. Was anyone there at the fire that evening? That's 50 some odd years ago, 53 years ago. Churches. We've had a number of churches that have caught fire over the past few decades. This is the Holy Trinity Catholic Church fire. December 29th, 1975, over in New Albany, at 7th and Market. Some images of that fire. That's what it looks like today. It's just a big open space. And that's what the church once looked like there in the upper left-hand corner. Again, they have some remnants there. The old church bells are displayed, sort of a park area where the church once was. This is over in the Portland neighborhood of Louisville. January 16th, 2009. The upper left-hand corner is what the church looked like before the fire, and some images of it during the fire or afterwards.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
you know, the night of that fire, the Portland Presbyterian fire, matter of fact, Pat Brown made that fire. All he done, he sat in the cab and kept warm all night. His own admission, I'm serious.
It looked like it was a cold night.
But the amazing thing about this fire there was that while this one was going on, Cafe Mimosa on Barstown Road caught on fire too.
Oh, wow.
Two major fires in the city of Louisville within an hour of each other.
Wow.
I listened to both of those on the scanner that night. It was nuts.
That's what the church looks like today. They just left the bell tower there. Second Presbyterian, this happened back, 70 some years ago, 1956. Second and Broadway area. some of the devastation of it was. And I think this was arson. I think someone did get into the church. It was vacant at the time. They'd already built their new facility out on Brownsboro Road. That's the new facility. But they had already relocated, and the church was vacant, and someone got inside and set a fire to it. First Unitarian, this was 1985, December 13th, 1985, another very cold night.
Yeah.
You may recall this one.
You know, firefighter almost died in that fire. A guy named Dave Miracle, the roof on that church was slate, and they were on would have been the right side in the middle, coming another firefighter, and the roof came down on him.
Wow.
And the only thing that saved him was the other firefighter picked his head up out of the water to keep him from drowning. Got burned bad.
But it was a very cold night. I remember going by the next day, it was like an ice castle because so much water had been put onto the church that was all frozen. But I'm glad there were no deaths, but very close to it, it sounded like. So the church has been restored. They kept fortunately the exterior walls remain, but it's more of a modern interior now. Wall Street Methodist Church, someone mentioned that earlier this evening, that happened here in Jeffersonville, at Wall and Chestnut Street, I believe.
Big fire. I was there for that whole thing.
So that was what, 45 years ago, 1979. And they rebuilt as a new church.
Served hot chocolate to all the firefighters, being
Another
scout.
cold night.
And we learned a very valuable lesson.
I didn't categorize how many of these fires happened during the winter, but it seemed like a lot of them did.
Don't serve hot chocolate in wax cups. They still drink it though.
This fire just happened a month or two ago. The old St. Paul's Evangelical Church down at Broadway and Brook. Prior to that fire, the rectory caught on fire, 3 or so years ago, and it burned, and this is what it looks like today. Unfortunately, they never have repaired it. But then the church caught on fire. I think someone got inside that. It was another cold night. Someone was trying to keep warm, started a fire. And to my knowledge, the stone facade is still standing and will keep standing. It had been slated to be redeveloped into a hotel. And I'm not certain what the current status of it is, but hopefully that's what it looked like the day after the fire. A lot of businesses caught on fire as well. Of course, the original Galt House there at 2nd and Main Street, pretty massive structure. It's my understanding in reading the history of this, someone was smoking in bed and caught it on fire, from what I understand. That's where it once stood, the old Galt House. The Whiskey Row is there today. This building here, the Power Company building, was advertised as being fireproof. You think it was? No. Well, on May 2nd, 1893, a fire pretty much destroyed the building. So there it is on the left, what it looked like, and then after the fire, what it looked like on the right. They turned it into a parking garage. The upper floors of the building were all destroyed. That's what stands there today, the Omni Hotel. Now this is an interesting one. This happened on, February 22nd, 1909. So a number of developers, you won't believe this, or building owners, wanted to lessen the fire code, especially in theaters. As some of you firefighters may know, and I'm being an architect, I'm very familiar with this, you have what's called travel distance to get out. How many feet do you have once a fire or an emergency happens? How many feet is it to get to an exit way? And usually it's 50 feet, 100 feet, it varies on type of structure. But here, the building owners wanted to lessen it or double the length from what is it, 30 feet or so, it may have been 60 feet, 100 feet. They wanted to go almost triple the distance to get out of a theater building. And so all my architectural brethren over 100 years ago said, no, you don't. We're in the life safety business. Actually, when you think of architects, you think of us as aesthetics, what we design really nice, these quality type buildings. But actually, we're in the fire protection business. We're in the life safety business. And codes are very important to us. And so my brethren over 100 years ago came together and went down to the city council and convinced them not to lessen the travel distance, to keep it as it was. And it's my understanding it still sort of is that same way today. And I think the firemen also went down. It always helps whenever us architects, especially over in Kentucky, we've done this several times, where we have to go to the state legislature when they're considering a building code change. We always call on the firemen and the fire officials to join with us, and you always come over with your red coats on and all, and you'll make a pretty good impact to those legislatures to back them off of changing the code. So this is one example of that over 100 years ago. We're in New Albany, the Opera House fire. It opened in 1866 and then burned in 1939. Every time I drive past this in New Albany, I just, what a beautiful building to have been decimated in such a manner. This was the Worldworth store, 224 West Market Street, pretty major league. For some reason, whenever we have a major fire, it draws a lot of people for some reason. You can see the crowd here watching this fire. That's what's there today, the convention center.
Oh, so pretty.
What, the convention center or the buildings that burned?
The building that burned.
I agree, yeah, I wish we could have saved that, yeah. A lot of hotels had fires. I just mentioned the Galt House. Here's the Hermitage Hotel on 5th Street, went up in flames. This was in 1963. I'm not certain when sprinklers came into buildings, especially hotels. I want to say the mid-70s, maybe into the 80s. Does anyone know when sprinklers were mandated into buildings? I know in the 1975 building code that I was familiar with, you had an option. You either had sprinklers or you had rated walls. And whenever we discussed that with owners as to which they preferred to do, they always chose the sprinkler system for various reasons, but one of them was build rated walls in a building was fairly costly, and sprinkler systems were the least costly item and a little bit more protection. So, but I want to say sprinklers have been in buildings at least in the last 50 years, if not more. Here was a building down at 6th and Washington, 1948 fire, pretty major league. I have no idea what that building was, but that's what's there now. The Kentucky Center for the Arts stands at that location. Thousand-watch rescue of guests at Preston Hotel fire. So this was down at 3rd and Main. The Parkmore Bowling Lane fire. And then this is one of the first ones that I remember as a young child being aware of. It was a bowling lane, alley, place, recreational building, caught fire. 3 firefighters tragically were killed during it. This was not far from where my grandfather lived, so I was familiar with that whole situation. Very tragic fire. The Ballard Flour Mills fire there on Broadway near Barrett in Beargrass Creek. Pretty massive complex that was there that was destroyed by fire. In 1970, so that's 54 years ago. Over in New Albany again, to be an old railroad depot. April 16th, 1981. That's what it looked like in better days. Quartermaster Depot. I'm sure everyone, hopefully in southern Indiana, is familiar with Quartermaster Depot. not too far from where we're at here today. January 18th, 1992. That's what it looks like today. You can see the green area is where the fire happened, and I don't know the history of why it caught fire. I think it was a carpet store that caught fire, and I'm not sure why the carpet caught on fire, but it's now your City Hall area and other W.T. Grant store fire over in New Albany again, September 30th, 1973. Goodwill Industries fire, February 12th, 1978. And this was a major fire. I think some firefighters were injured with this one. The ladder truck there that you see was damaged by the wall falling onto it, and several firefighters were injured due to that. And I think y'all have something here from that fire,
There was
right?
siren from that truck.
Siren.
Dented, yeah.
Talking more about that and the fire. The Moser Leather, oh, sorry, I misspelled leather there, leather tannery business caught fire just not too long ago, about like 6 years ago. What's kind of sad about this, they had proposed this huge development to renovate that old structure into a sort of mixed-use complex. Looked pretty fascinating. That would have been great to have been built. Now they're building homes there. I think it's becoming a residential little neighborhood, if you will. Homes are being built in that vacant land. Steamwood Veneer Mill. Again, if anyone's been a part of any of these fires, feel free to talk about them. August 13th, 2020, fairly recent. Hopefully everyone remembers this fire, the Horner Novelty in downtown Jeffersonville. Very major league. And hopefully, again, some people were at this fire. It was pretty significant. So there's what it looked like after the fire, the top black and white photo, and then what it is today. They pretty much, I believe they demoed that entire area and just rebuilt it. I don't think they say the building in the lower right-hand corner there at the intersection, I think that's a total new building as well. I think,
It's a total new.
yeah, they pretty
They
much,
didn't save the facility.
they didn't save anything. It's like, but they did a decent job, I think,
They did.
in rebuilding it. Restaurant fires. We were just talking about the one restaurant that burned. The upper left-hand corner was some sort of a food restaurant sort of a thing at 18th and Jefferson. Of course, the more recent one, just last September, that one historic building there. And I've been meaning to go down and see what they've done to that. I think it still looks like what it did when it caught fire. I'm not seeing any renovation plans for it. I do think they saved the facade, but very sad to see all that. I know the buildings adjacent to it are becoming a hotel, I believe. A lot of restaurant fires, and these are the only ones I have, but if anyone else knows of any other restaurant fires you want to bring up, feel free to do so. But it seems like a lot of restaurants always are catching fire. The Whiskey Row fire. Remember this one distinctly, 2015. The previous mayor of Louisville wanted to demolish all of this. They wanted to tear it all down, but we horrible preservationists saved it and wanted to restore it. And then the next thing you know, it's all going up in flames, and we're all just wringing our hands like, oh my gosh, this is just horrible, terrible situation. But fortunately, they were able to salvage it and save it. What started the fire, was my understanding, a welder's torch. They were in there doing some renovation or whatever, and the welder's torch touched off the fire.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
a lot of these shots are aerial shots. Is there like a helicopter? Is that like standard procedure for?
Well, actually, what this is, there's a huge parking garage right opposite Caddy Corner. This, you can see the parapet of the garage there, so that's how that photograph was taken. Let me see about the others. Now, this would have been taken from a news helicopter, yeah, that would. But this one here would have been taken from the parking garage.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
did you take that picture?
I don't think so. No,
I
I
think
was.
that's one of the ones that I took. 'Cause I went up the elevator, I actually got a couple of pictures in the elevator, glass elevator.
Yes.
Went up to that parking garage,
Correct.
and I took a couple of shots of it also when I was going up.
I'll give you credit for this then.
And the thing about that is, the coping on that parking garage was about 18 inches wide, and it was very precarious trying to get over far enough to take a picture.
It was a great photograph.
Yeah.
You really captured it with all the firefighting. I'm not sure how many alarms this was, but I want to say, how many?
I think it's fourth.
4 alarm. For those of you that, I take it everyone knows what a 4-alarm fire would mean. Anyone that doesn't know it, I think it's the number of companies that are called out to fight the fire. But that's what it looks like today. They saved it. Thank y'all for saving it. And it's now one of the top tourist attractions in Louisville. And we horrible preservationists got no credit by the previous mayor. When he had a big celebration down there to announce the restoration, my invitation got lost in the mail. Dang on it.
You must have moved.
Yeah, I must have, yeah, dang on it. Didn't get invited to the big celebration, but we fortunately were able to save it, and it's now phenomenal. I highly recommend if you have guests in from out of town to go down to the Brown Foreman, the Oak Forester Distillery. It's phenomenal. The Appliance Park fire, and it just happened, it happened just before, let me see, the Whiskey Row was July 6th, 2015. This one was April 3rd, 2015. So just within a couple of months of each other. And this was a 7-alarm fire and over almost $500 million in damage. Just a devastating fire. I do not know what the cause of this fire was. Did anyone ever hear of it? Or was
I think it was undetermined.
undetermined?
The storm came through and I think it was lightning.
You wasn't know?
Lightning.
Wow.
Storm came through that night.
Yeah, that whole morning, it was crazy rains, it was flash flooding, and companies were everywhere making water rescues when this rain came in.
So you see they never rebuilt that factory building there. I outlined it in yellow where it once stood. It's a distribution center. It was. Some non-fire events that a lot of firefighters have been called out to. This was the infamous DuPont plant explosion back in 1965 down in the Rubbertown area of West Louisville. You can see in the upper corner there, you can see the Sherman-Minton Bridge and the Indiana power station, which I think caused the Stewart a couple of weeks ago when there was some sort of major explosion or they imploded something there, which frightened a lot of Louisvillians at the time. But anyways, the plant exploded there. And the firemen there to assist. And then the most dramatic non-fire that's happened recently. I mean, this was phenomenal. I take it some of you may have been involved in that. I don't know, but if you were, if you want to talk about it somewhat, it's just, wow. Made national news, probably made international news as well. Just unreal that all that happened, and if it wasn't for that one beam there, and one of the cross beam structural truss holding that truck from going over the edge, the lady that was driving it, she had a guardian angel with her that day.
There was a whole lot of divine intervention in that incident,
Yes.
technical aspects of how, what they did and how they did it.
You know, the lady that was in the truck, her and Bryce Card and the guy that was on the road, they've actually become friends. They've got together several times,
Mm.
and,
Yeah, if I was her, I would send him a Christmas card every year.
you know what he said about that deal? He said when he was doing it, because I talked to him right after he got done, I gave him a hug, I said, good job, brother, and he said, you know, he said the whole time I was out on the road, I was going down to get her, I got her, and brought her back up. He said, the only thing I was thinking about was rescuing her. He said, reality didn't set in until her and I were both on the bridge. And he said, once I realized, he said, once that happened, he said, I guess he had adrenaline, he just didn't realize it. But he said, when I finally stepped foot on the bridge, he said, that's when I realized what I had done. And if you watch the video, it took him, from the time he touched the window till she came out, was 5 minutes. You know, it was 45 minutes in the air for her, but it was 5 minutes from the time he touched the window, put a safety harness on her, and got her out the window. It was 5 minutes.
I was amazed how he put that safety harness on her, and she being as calm as she was during that whole episode. But he was so focused on the task ahead, he didn't realize all the other drama happening with that.
And the ironic thing is that he didn't have a rescue knife with him to cut the seatbelt off, but he remembered LG&E, I believe it was, had given all of them a knife, and he had it in his pocket. He didn't have one on his belt, but he had one in his pocket, and he got his LG&E knife out and cut the seatbelt off.
Wow. Yeah, it would have been something if he had to come back up to get a knife. Oh, gosh. Well, anyway, it's just dramatic, and that just highlights the heroism that the firemen go through in this situation. And speaking of that, downtown Louisville does have a beautiful firefighters, a memorial there listing all the firefighters who tragically have given their all in the line of duty. Very nice. I don't know if Southern Indiana has a similar firefighters memorial, but if not, you may want to consider something like that. It really is a nice tribute to what you do. And that is it. I got some books if you're interested. And any questions? But all that, it sounded like we answered a lot of those as we went through the discussion here. But yeah, if there were any other fires that we did not mention, or if you have any questions, especially the civilians that are here, about some of the firefighting techniques, feel free to mention those.
Steve, are you familiar with the TBA plastics fire? It was in Jefferson County within about 1992.
No, I did not come across that, but yeah, where was it located? And
It was somewhere in southern Jefferson County. I don't remember which department was the first new department, but fire, as I understand, I was going to school at EKU as a fire, science program at the time, and volunteer with Worthington Fire Department. I think Worthington was the only department in Jefferson County that did not get involved in that incident at some point in time. It's my understanding that the fire started in a loading dock area at a company that made and handled plastic containers, and the fire worked its way into the building. If any of you guys know more details.
It's on Great Lane.
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
And,
The plastic fire?
Yes.
Yeah.
And worked its way into the building, and it burned for days and days.
it was called the TBA.
TBA
Those
plastics.
TBA.
Is that the one, CJ, where when a couple days after they got back to the firehouses, that all the grass and all the crows
Yes.
started rusting on the trucks?
Yes, I do believe it. I think it was Oklahoma. One of their trucks was condemned and literally was put on a flatbed and taken straight to a contamination yard, never seen again.
Yeah.
They had a handful of departments had trucks that had to be stripped down, decontaminated. A lot of equipment was destroyed.
When did you guys have to start wearing the oxygen mask and all that to protect from situations with that like that?
I mean, that technology really first became, I would say, relatively commonplace in the late 70s, but it was, even though the equipment was commonplace, it was not commonly used or mandatorily used
Yeah.
until late 80s, and even up until very, very recently, our uses of SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, were not as much as they should have been. And a lot of that has to do with, the evolution of not just, equipment technology, but also, in the days when, John Turner and even me, when we got started in the fire service, if you had a structure fire, the building itself was primarily made of natural materials, wood. Most of the content was mostly natural materials, wood, natural products, cotton cloth, etc. And then with the evolution of synthetic materials, plastics, and so on, the type of smoke you're dealing with has changed. So in our early days, we didn't think too much of, being a quote-unquote smoke eater and not worrying about the damn air pack, because typically it was stored in a case inside the truck, and you just, oh, hell, we're not going to fool with the time to do that. We're just going to hold our breath, get in there, and get the job done. And in the era of natural materials, you can get away with a lot more of that than you can when you're dealing with plastics. And so much so that now what we have found in modern times is, for probably 20 years now or so, we've realized that when a person suffers from smoke inhalation, that one of the big issues of the chemicals they're dealing with is carbon monoxide, which is a chemical asphyxiant. But what we've found in recent years is just as bad or worse of an issue with the smoke of a fire is the burning of plastics producing hydrogen cyanide. And yeah, phosgene basically is, that type of a toxic gas. So what we have found, and now on the medical side of the field, we realize that hydrogen cyanide is such a problem because of synthetics that now most fire departments and ambulance services carry what they call a cyano kit, which basically it's an IV that if someone has experienced severe smoke inhalation, you start this IV, and it's about almost a typical big IV bag is 1,000 milliliters. It's about that size, but it's full of what's called cyanocobalamin, which basically is vitamin B12, and if I remember right. And basically, you just you give them a massive dose of that, and it binds to the hydrogen cyanide and gets it out of your system. And because we now have that technology, we have figured out that the use of that cyano kit and that technology is now saving lives, because we understand, because of the plastics and being able to deal with that hazard, that's modern technology compared to, like I said, the good old days of, okay, it's just wood and natural materials burning. We just eat a little smoke. Get a little
Yeah, and that's, a lot of firefighters, they may not die there at the fire, but later on due to breathing those type of carcinogens.
And it's one of the reasons why I bring up TBA plastics. Early in my career in the fire service, when VHS technology was a new thing, we had these training tapes that got put out. They were called, put out by University of Cincinnati, called American Heat. I mean, firefighters, I'm sure you're probably familiar with those videos. And one of the things they did in these training videos is they would do a little blurb on significant fires and lessons learned. One of the fires that was detailed in one of the American Heat videos was, I believe it was in like Milwaukee or somewhere like that, was a fire in a plastics factory. And that had occurred in the late 70s, early 80s. And this was in the era when air packs were a relatively new thing. Use of them wasn't mandatory. And keep in mind, now this fire happened in the late 70s, early 80s. We're watching this video in 1989. And in the video, they were documenting where numerous firefighters that were involved in that incident had all either died from or were suffering from cancer. And I have a high suspicion that at some point in the very near future, we are going to see a similar incident or a similar experience with the people who are involved with the TVA plastics fire. And I'm not so sure that some people in the local fire service haven't already, been victims of that fire, and just we didn't realize that ultimately was what caused their demise.
Yes.
What's odd with that is we've also just very recently had a couple of firefighters that were involved in the General Electric fire.
Yes.
And very shortly after that fire, died of cancer, young guys.
Yes.
I know one from Ivy and one from Oklahoma died really young, very shortly after that fire.
Hey, Steve, the other thing, Scott packs, what we call our self-contained breathing apparatuses, were the thing, and eventually you had to wear them. They were mandatory. But the other thing they found out in the fire service over the years, and this man behind me, he had a lot to do with getting the ball rolling on investigation and research and stuff. And they found out a lot of what happens with carcinogens is it absorbed through your skin. When you get hot in a fire and your pores open up, then you get that absorption of carcinogens into your skin. So what they've done, and now when a firefighter goes in, he's totally encapsulated. He has a hood and everything on and gloves. But the standard now is that if you, back in the day when us guys were on, it was kind of a badge of courage to have dirty fire gear and a dirty helmet. But they found out years later that that was bad. So now, what they have to do, if a firefighter makes a fire, and I don't know if it's like that where you're at, Troy, but a lot of places, if you make a fire, you bring your fire gear back, you throw it in a special washing machine to wash your fire gear. You put a new set of gear on track. And most places now, like our drill school at 15th and Hill, fire gear is not even allowed inside the administration building. There's signs there, no fire gear.
They're decon, a lot of departments now, they're deconning at the scene.
Yeah.
You come out, they've got like garden hose or just, a real line. They'll hose it down,
Yeah.
put it in a bag before they get back in the truck.
Yeah. A lot of pumpers now in Louisville, on a trash line discharge, they'll take a coupling, like a inch and a half to garden hose,
Yeah.
and they'll put a garden hose on the front discharge just for that.
We're seeing in one diamond associated with that, they're deconning, if a structure fire, they decon,
Yeah.
when they come out, before they get back on the truck,
Yeah.
and they got a spare set of gear when they get back to the station, and the other one just take
Yeah.
into the extractor.
To attend that, what you're talking about, I got here late. Did you talk about the 1991 fire on Main Street in the old ice house? That little block building with no windows?
Yeah.
Oh, I know it, yeah, you're talking about the one down,
What-
East
how did you
East
handle
Main
that?
Street.
How was it handled? Did you actually hit the wind or did you just
Well,
close it?
I think there was blown insulation in court. Yeah. It's one of them, a fire like that, we made a similar one that up on Boxer Avenue one time, or Barrett
That was a
Avenue.
big building.
And a lot of it is, you have to put a large amount of water on it, but the other thing is, it's just so hard to contain because it spreads on the back side of it. And it's hard to put out. A lot of times, fires like that, you basically let them burn out.
That's what I just through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just,
Because I know it put up
oh
a
yeah.
pillar of black smoke,
Yeah.
2 miles high.
Yeah.
You talk about the one there at East Main and Hancock in downtown
Yeah.
Louisville, the old ice.
Yeah.
Roasters Heights.
It's condos now.
Yeah,
But you didn't
rebuilt it, yeah. The top part of it was torn off, yeah. Well, that's all great history, thank you. That's one reason why I like these interactive presentations, to learn more of these histories. Anyone else? I know a lot of you would like to go out and see the vintage firefighting equipment that we have here, but if you have any other questions, we'll go ahead and shut it down. And thank everyone for attending. Kurt, any other you had a couple other comments.
Yeah, first of all, we want to thank Steve for a great. And secondly, I think it'd be nice if everybody who is or
Talk about
do a little video of all this and add it on to the end. Solve these problems.